And I guess this makes sense potentially why we haven't seen many other documentaries about restaurants, because they all play music.
Yeah. It's really hard.
And I guess a lot of other documentarians are probably looking at that going, oh my God, this is a nightmare to license. I'm never going to do this. And I guess I was stupid enough to go, yeah, I'll find a way to make it work.
Sure.
I just need to get the story.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. David Liu here, director of To Be Seen, here at Soundcrafter today with my sound supervisor, Morgan Honaker.
Hello. We had to recreate all of the kitchen sounds, and each restaurant, each kitchen, we wanted to have a distinct sonic palette. I even have different room tones for each kitchen. So if I go into our backgrounds.
Foreign and Domestic's founded on the neighborhood concept.
So for instance, Foreign and Domestic is a little airier, Leroy and Lewis is a little darker, and then Tyson, he's got a really deep, kind of rich tone.
It's very street side because of the location of the restaurant, right?
Exactly. Since he's in a trailer, I wanted something a little bassier, just to mimic traffic outside. And so room tone's usually what I start with. It helps. Each room tone has a different kind of vibe, a different texture. So every time we cut away to a different restaurant, I have different tone shifting. And that also helps to smooth everything out. And so just trying to build out what is the world like for each one of these restaurants, because that's really helpful for me to have as my foundation for my sound design. So that's how I started. And then from there, I tended to work on discrete effects. So that is things like you see a door close, you hear a door close. You see a drawer open, you hear a drawer open. In what we're looking at right now, we see misters outside, cut in a little bit of mister sound. So everything that's obvious that needs coverage is where I go to next, which is similar just to build out the reality of the soundscape. And then from there, I started working on the subjective effects, which is probably the most interesting aside from music. So I have a whole folder of just subjective things that we did. So, everything from digital crumble to the ice storm, all of that is what I worked on next. And that was really helpful to work on in tandem with score. So I had your score to work off of and to kind of help inform where are pockets where sound design needs to be more present, where are the frequency is going to have to be to where I'm not interfering too much with score and complementing it. The final element that I actually was not, I supervised but did not do myself is, of course, the Foley, which is where we get a lot of the texture of these spaces. So the props, the footsteps, spray bottles, everything that we see and want to hear is what Foley's doing for us. So pours, what do we got? Bowls, trays, all of this stuff our lovely Foley artist Janae did for us and adds a heightened sense of realism from what you would normally see in a doc. This is a process we do for narrative often, but is very rare for documentary.
In that light of this documentary being kind of an interesting animal for you, when it comes to preparing for a film in which it's treated somewhat like a narrative, was that a challenge that you saw was a fun one, or more out of necessity in that regard?
I feel like every film kind of is trying to communicate to you what it needs to work. And this film, before I even saw the finished cut, we had already been talking about it. It was very clear that this was going to have to be treated more like narrative than traditional documentary. Yes, there are talking heads, but there are talking heads in a more experimental way than in a traditional doc. Yes, there's some verite stuff, but we still have freedom to push reality in this film in a way that I think is still very realistic, but is more impressionistic and less like, super verite style. We went through and spotted the film where we talked about the design for every section, and that was just like confirmation that this was going to be treated much more like narrative in terms of sound design than it was more traditional doc. And I'd had a couple of docs that sort of push the frame of reality a bit more, but this was the most involved by far.
I guess with the way that we've approached the sound design on this film and the way that you talked about approaching it, I guess this makes sense potentially why we haven't seen many other documentaries about restaurants, because they all play music.
Yeah. It's really hard.
And I guess a lot of other documentarians are probably looking at that going, oh my God, this is a nightmare to license. I'm never going to do this. And I guess I was stupid enough to go, yeah, I'll find a way to make it work.
Sure.
I just need to get the story.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, restaurants, clubs, bars are always, like a sound person's nightmare, right? Because you, not only do you have to worry about licensing music, but even if you could get it, Creative Commons use or whatever, like you're cutting for an editor in between tons of different footage, the song's going to shift constantly. There's not a lot as sound mixers we can do about that. So recreating everything from the ground up, like we did with your film, is kind of the only option unless you want to go like, tons of slow motion, just score. But if you want to get into like the reality of how kitchens sound and restaurants as like a space behave sonically, you kind of just have to recreate. So it's a lot of work. This is just
for the people watching. I want everybody to see this. This is all of the
backgrounds. These are all ambiances right through here. This is like actual true sound design, so less because we're doing that here and there. We have discrete effects. We have more discrete effects. I think actually these are all the Walla and crowd groups that I did. Yes, these are all the voices. And this is all the discrete sound effects. And then we have Foley through here, more Foley, footsteps only are right here. Production effects, which are just where we have in the production audio clips that don't have dialogue in them, and we pull those out and put them on their own effects tracks. And then all of our dialogue or production audio from set. A lot of information for a doc. This is very unusual for a documentary. This is more something you would see with like a true narrative film.
And I guess, if we go back up to the dialogue's the only thing, I think, minus a few days where we actually did use the wild, the actual captured mic stuff from the day of that we actually used. The majority of the things that were kept were dialogues. Almost everything below this had to be made in post-production.
Exactly.
Can you run through for everybody watching the distinction here between what the music looks like
Sure.
in terms of track length, and then how it compares against some of the effects work and how we kind of balance that?
Yeah. So music we've got down here at the bottom. So David bounced out all stems for us, which means every individual instrument that he used, we have an individual track for, in addition to all of the reverbs that he used in his mastering. So music, you can see, is interspersed throughout. We have a lot of music at the very beginning and the very end. And then we have this section in the middle where there is basically no music. And so we had to create, kind of steer our emotional voyage with sound design instead. And you can see there is a lot more sound design information in this particular part of the film. Here, this is probably the most effective way to look at it, is just to do a scroll from bottom to top.
Yeah.
Reel 2, baby. Oh my God. It's a lot of work. It keeps
So instead of
going.
score, this just got super heavy
Yes,
in
sound design.
and effects work. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can tell, this section right through here is reel 2. And then if we go over to reel 3, there is quite a bit less in this section here. So Reel 2 was a big, heavy lift. Although I will also say the very, very beginning of this doc was also a heavy lift. I think the first, this is a minute 40-ish. This first section took me like a day at least, 2 days maybe, to just like sketch out. Part of it is it was the first bit I worked on, so I was trying to find my footing in this project, but also, the beginning of this film is cut very specifically, and I needed to make design that would accent that. And also, we actually start with sound before we, see picture, and so I had to figure out a way to set the tone from the first thing you hear, and that took me a while.
Yeah, I think the score for the first 2
Yep.
minutes of the film took me a week.
Yeah, and that starts to flow. You can roll into it.
Yeah, and then everything else got a little easier after that. I guess let's take a look at how we've routed everything. I think is interesting for those of you who haven't seen this before. This is what an Atmos renderer looks like. And I really, when I was imagining the film, I very much felt that the sonic environment in which you are sitting, as Morgan said, is a very slightly impressionistic viewpoint of what that environment should feel like versus what it actually sounds like.
That morphed into everybody lost power. All of our staff was without power.
So this is our pan control, which shows how sounds are playing across the room. Lifted some things up, pulled them back in the room so that we have some distinction between sounds. So some things are more at a neutral position, not lifted. In general, though, we tend to pull sound design into the surrounds so that it pops out a bit from dialogue, which is typically in center, because we're seeing people talk in front of us. It would be weird to hear them around us unless that's something that you want to do. Same for music. Music tends to be pulled a bit back to give things some space. We don't have any music playing at this present moment, but...
Why don't you jump to a spot with some music real quick?
Let's see. Let's go to...
I say real quick. I know it takes a second to load.
Let's go to the end, actually.
Not that section.
Hee hee. Let's go
Real 3,
here.
yeah, the latest.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So, for instance, with music, we tend to have things pulled a little closer center, but pulled back a little bit more. And if we get some strings here, you can see, pull them back about a quarter of the way, but that depends on your personal taste. And so here's a good example too of what David gave us in turnover. Hello.
He might have put the volume really low on that.
He did, that's why it's not playing.
Yeah.
So we have, just for one, what sounds like a pretty simple cue with just some plucked strings. We actually have 3 stems going here. One's more dry, one's it's more wet. That's what term we use for talking about like verb and reverb. And then we have one that is very, very, very quiet, but if I were to pull this up, yeah, has kind of a slap on it.
Yeah, these are the ambient spill mics for those wondering. So for a lot of the instruments use the Spitfire libraries, and I basically triple the tracks, and I do like the Deca tree, the tape output versions, and then I do the ambient spill. They are time delayed, which is the big thing you have to worry about. But if we're using them in a situation in which they're expected to be time delayed at the back of the mix, then they're kind of a nice addition to if you have a section of the rear mix that needs something versus just dragging all the sounds to the rear.
So for our reverb, which was very important for this film, especially with our design, we were mostly using Cinematic Rooms, which is a Liquid Sonics plugin suite. Liquid Sonics is a plugin manufacturer. They make a lot of great stuff. And one of my favorites is Cinematic Rooms, which is a reverb that can function in, importantly, 7.1.2. So it can do surround reverb, which is really nice. So for us, we have, the way we set things up is we send each like type of thing through a reverb. So for instance, dialogue
Universe, do you think you
has
live in where
its
that
own 2 reverb tracks. We have reverb for effects. So let me go to Reel 2 real quick. And you can see here, the reverb track's populating, and then here is our plugin where we can choose, basically we can adjust everything that we could possibly need to adjust here. And for some of these sequences, we really drenched them in a lot of verb for a narrative reason, and we needed something that could do that in surround, which Cinematic Rooms can do.
And one of the requests that I got, you know, especially because I was the composer too, and the way that you guys process reverb was to provide my score broken out without reverb, because then when you mix it, it becomes a problem if I'm baking in a reverb that you guys don't want, right?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
If I pull up the Dad Man and turn some stuff off, I can actually play just the reverb. So when we were mixing this, we mostly focused on a reverb out of the top, out of the, in the Atmos matrix, the other dimension that you get in surround. And so here, it's very faint, but we can hear it in this room. We pulled a lot of the reverbs up in the vertical space in the mix so that they would kind of like swim over top, which was an interesting sound that made everything feel a lot more spacey, especially in the sections where we wanted that.
Yeah, so I think during our testing, I guess we found that, you know, especially on the 2-channel down mix or any of the other stuff, it's like really in front, right? And we want, I guess, you know, you've been wanting to make that change for a bit.
Yeah, there's some sound design elements that are just a little too we want them to stand out a bit more, you know? And so I'm gonna do that here.
no one needs a restaurant to eat.
The reason that we do so much panning is we really need to have like pockets in the mix where things can sit, because if everything's coming center, if everything's coming out of front, left, and right, you have no distinction in elements. Everything starts to get kind of smattered together, which is not what we want. We want clarity, and we want spaces for things to be able to rest comfortably, instead of everything competing for space in the center.
No one needs a restaurant to eat. You need a restaurant to feel civil, to be seen, or to see others, to know what it feels like to operate in the presence of other people doing the same thing.
I have things I want to change.
Yeah. I guess what's interesting is now that we made the change to that one, like the ripple effects are,
You have to
that we have to
change the
change all the
others.
rest of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
opening.
On this shove, after the dialogue is done, just like pulling this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this. Okay, so like now,
To eat.
okay, let's play this back.
All right.
No one needs a restaurant to eat.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was messing around with the effects track that was separated out, I'm like, my God, this thing feels like a really hot sound.
Yeah, it's to me,
Yeah.
Foley needs to be almost invisible. It's actually a beef I have with a lot of modern movies. Is Foley is mixed way too hot. It becomes distracting. It should be there as a texture, but
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be really in your face and should be, but like here,
It's a restaurant to eat.
I don't know. I feel like it doesn't need to be quite as
Yeah,
punchy.
it doesn't need to be as like slap forward. Now, I think one of the interesting parts is to make, even though we are doing a very impressionistic viewpoint of the sound, you still have to have that level of believability that your brain still thinks that it is that as if you were there. It was recorded for real, and so like not trying to remove that possibility from that level. I won't say it's a level of illusion, but that level of intended realism
Yeah.
needs to kind of remain regardless.
And then like here, I have something that I kind of wanted to spin around the room a little bit. So this is like a beep that I modulated a little. This is what it sounds like now. And I want this to move a bit more. So this is just a mono effect. And so I have a little more, it's gonna sound a little more harshly panned than a stereo effect would necessarily. And so what I'm gonna do here, because I want a sense of motion, is see how that sounds with the mix.
We see it as a method.
And that's kind of cool, but now I need to,
Oh, you need to go change the volume for it because
well, importantly, I also need to, because we have a dry effect up top.
oh yeah.
So I need to grab, now you can see this is the automation that I wrote in that window over there where I was dragging the dot around. And now I'm gonna just grab this automation data and copy it up to this spot. So now if I just solo these two, they actually move in the same direction.
In the same direction. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and that's one fix.
That's one fix out of many, and we're only at the first minute of the film. I think this design change we've actually gone through. It's kind of scary to think at least like 5 different revisions, and we've all listened to it a few times.
And that's on the low side, honestly. We did not do that much revision on this. Sometimes we're doing, there have been films I've worked on that we've worked on years afterward, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just sometimes, you get on different distribution sites, you license different music, things change, and you have to come back to it. This was actually, especially for a feature film, 5 or so revisions is really
Not bad.
not a lot at all. Especially, not all of those were with me. Some of those were just with our mixer, Tom. So,
Yeah. I think the part for me as like a new filmmaker, coming into this, experiencing just how involved sound was. I mean, I kind of had an idea that it was a lot. I didn't know it was this much. So, very glad to have a great team that was able to put all this together.
you're welcome.
But filmmakers, take sound seriously.
Take sound seriously. It's very important. There's too
But-
much in the back?
Too much in the front.
Well, I'm here. Hold on. Oh, I hear what you're saying now. Oh, gosh.
Because I think what's happened is he doubled them. And I'm like, you have to be careful with the wides, because the wides plus the normal ones.
Yeah.
because the wides are supposed to be like here.
It's a little better.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
As my first score, I mean, whatever. It's it's learning experiences, but yeah.
That feels a bit better.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That was a good note. You can't have as much of the string up front. It needs to be pulled back.
I think for the audience too, I think one of the things that I'm finding out is like, you can't, we're essentially live mixing an album while mixing the film because I have all 90 something tracks of my music completely split out. This is like trying to master an album while also trying to mix a film. So you got to hand it to this team. They're doing some wild stuff that I unfortunately set them into.
I can't believe it's 90 tracks. That's crazy.
With the Outriggers, it might be more. It might be like 110. But
Oh my God.
but yeah, I gave them some fun problems.
With our original 10 cases, it's our estimation the risk for further community spread is high.
Now could be the real difference between survival and failure.
I'm going to be working on this for a bit, I think.
Okay.
Of picking at it the way that I want it to sound.
Yeah.
Because it sounds really good the way it is now. But no, that made a difference.
Okay. So we'll have to probably go in, and we'll probably be doing a few more of these.
Yeah.